This question is from Ahmed Awais. The question is, what an administration should adopt to generate a highly motivated team when it is short of incentives in terms of money or salary?
Yeah, that's a common question from in a lot of companies. It is because people are not really going in detail as to how the human psychology is constructed, specifically the inner drive based on the intrinsic factors of motivation. And this is a big problem. We have to understand that there's a bigger list, more deeper list, long-term effects of intrinsic motivators than any extrinsic motivator that you're ever going to be placing inside your company. And most companies actually focus a lot more on the extrinsic factors because of Mayo, the more dominant philosophy of management sciences. And this is a bigger problem. It's actually a cancer when you look at it, because it's actually spreading out and creating a lot more demotivation and depression inside the employees. But when you have a lot more pay raise and bonuses and away days and vacations and so on, and they're used as a motivator, that actually is a very temporary flux, and it has a very short half-life. And for long-term motivation, you have to have a very direct address to the intrinsic motivation that human beings are born with, and that actually comes from a more horizontal stretch. And there are many experiments that was done by very well-known psychologists. You have to read those. That they started taking away the extrinsic motivators, so much so that they actually shut down electricity in a company, and people started bringing candles to work. And this is how well the internal system is designed to self-motivate themselves. So you have to list down the intrinsic motivators, know the psychology, specifically your own people. Try and see what kind of external environment surrounds your company, because a lot of people induce a lot of pedestals of what they want to achieve from the external environment. Try and read that carefully. You'll see that you'll come out of the effect of Taylorism, which was actually against the intrinsic motivators, and again throw away this Mayo philosophy, and again create more data-based diagrams for your own people. Try and understand what learning actually is. Okay, let me just give you a little one-line explanation as to how intrinsic motivators work. Define a very clear purpose, which is, of course, going to suffice for the domestic needs as well as professional needs. Once you have a definition of their purpose, consciously defined specifically for every individual, then you draw out a diagram as to where you want to take them, and where is your company helping them, and how is it helping them achieve their intrinsic purposes. And then you draw out a learning diagram, which is a horizontal stretch of the people to grow. Make a very clear process of cross-functional exposure to people. Try and understand that. First, read what Taylorism was all about, so that you can see that you should not have an effect of two different philosophies coming in as an HR person or a decision maker. And then you first create a learning environment, and then make sure there's a recall of the purpose in your company all the time, so that they can actually keep sticking to every learning to the purpose. And then they'll actually be able to qualify whether they want to opt for a certain type of certification or learning or any sort of exposure to another department. But there has to be a fair distribution of all of this. And it should not be based on hierarchy. And that's where Taylorism actually comes into play. And this is, it has to be across the board, and has to, because learning is not experience dependent. Learning is not expertise dependent. If anything, it's on the contrary. So actually, the lower you are in the hierarchy, the more you need to learn. That's what I'm trying to say. So once you understand that, then you'll understand how to put, because another intrinsic motivator is the fairness of the system, and the justice, the need of justice. So if there's a fair system and a very clearly defined, transparent process, more dopamine centers are going to dilate. People are going to try to have more drive towards achieving that learning, and they'll know why they're achieving that learning, hence the purpose. And that's when people are not going to be needing those plastic motivation techniques that most companies are evolving, because of a lot more of philosophical errors made by mainstream philosophers and psychologists of the management sciences.